give us a fucking moment. Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
My paper beats your rock.
Ah, fuck it. You have the right to remain fucking silent. You have the right to an attorney. Anything you say can and fucking will. You just made my fucking day.
If Mavis Beacon was trying to beat a high score on Time Crisis 3 while smoking PCP out of a PVC and Peter Jackson's Dead Alive played in the next room, you'd basically have all the elements of today's game. To get there though, we're diving into one of the most important series of zombie games in history, influential enough that the late great George Romero, creator of the Night of the Living Dead series and the father of the zombie film, credited this series, along with Resident Evil, for bringing zombies into mainstream popular culture. The series, of course, is the House of the Dead, a long-running light gun series by Sega, starting with its first title in 1996, now with 7 mainline titles with likely more to come, 9 spin-off games, 2 films, and several appearances in other Sega media, like Superstars Tennis and All-Stars Racing. It's a big deal. However, it's worth taking a sidebar to talk about light gun shooters for those who didn't grow up going to arcades. Basically, they're like on-rail shooters, where movement is predetermined by the game and gameplay is aiming and shooting. What's different is actually the controller, as to play light gun games as intended, you need a gun-shaped controller to fire at the screen. Now these tend to be arcade games or played on consoles for that reason. There are crossovers onto computers, but oftentimes light gun games get much easier with mouse aiming, losing some of the chaotic, quarter-draining intensity, becoming relatively slow rail shooters. You need to purchase a typically expensive light gun adapter, which is too high of a barrier of entry for most people. But what if developers tried to shift the light gun shooter into a different genre altogether? One that mimics the bedlam, pandemonium, and anarchy of a light gun game while working best on computers. The House of the Dead series did just that. I will be honest though, this series has some of the weirdest genre crossovers I've ever seen. We have mainly light gun and rail shooters, yes, but mixed in are genres like beat 'em up, pinball, translation, minigame compilation, an unreleased darts game, and not 1, not 2, but 3 typing games. Frankly, it's very bizarre, like if the Dead or Alive fighting game series suddenly made beach volleyball games, or if the Silent Hill series suddenly made slot machines. It's crazy. Anyway, today we're exploring the most recent of the typing spin-offs, adapting the light gun gameplay into a frantic challenge of keyboard speed. My name is Harvey Bodega. Welcome to the review of
The Typing of the Dead. Overkill!
So I feel like I owe you an explanation on why we're playing Typing of the Dead Overkill, rather than starting with the first or second typing spin-off. Well, each typing game is an adaptation of a mainline title, just with shooting or clicking switched to typing in order to kill zombies. Although, this game makes the distinction that they're mutants.
Shit! I fucking hate these zombies!
Mutants? How many times do I have to tell you not to use the Z word?
Then comes 2009's The House of the Dead Overkill, which is actually a spin-off made for the Nintendo Wii, a non-canon prequel to the original House of the Dead. So, our game today is a typing spin-off of a non-canon prequel spin-off to a game from 1996. So why this one and not the others? Well, being non-canon and a spin-off of a spin-off can allow this game to stand on its own, story-wise. Although if you're familiar with this type of game, you'll know that that's not typically the focus. Secondly, it's the easiest typing game to acquire, being available on Steam and running on modern systems. Lastly, the rail shooter version of the House of the Dead Overkill is actually included in this game, although I won't be focusing on that in this video. Basically, I don't have to worry about story continuity, and by the end of this whole thing, I can truly recommend or not recommend that you check this game out. We should probably get started with the review, huh? Let's get into the presentation, starting off with how this game looks. Judging the visuals in this game is weird, because it's a 2013 adaptation of a 2009 game, although it's really a full adaptation of the 2011 The House of the Dead Overkill extended cut. So should we compare it to other titles from 2009, 11, or 13? Well, I think that Typing of the Dead Overkill generally looks worse than all of them. Comparing it to 2013's BioShock Infinite or The Last of Us leaves it in shame, as does Batman Arkham City or Deus Ex Human Revolution, both from 2011. 2009 had Dragon Age Origin and Assassin's Creed 2, which is much closer to the graphical quality, but still beats Typing of the Dead Overkill. But Harvey, a disembodied dissenting voice cries, this is unfair comparing AAA titles to a light gun shooter exclusive to the Wii, known for relatively doo-doo graphics. Well, thank you, Mr. Voice. That's a totally valid point, although I wouldn't use the word doo-doo. Then let's compare to 2009's Dead Space Extraction or even 2007's Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, both initially Wii exclusive light gun rail shooters. I still think our subject for today loses out. So I'm telling you, the graphics ain't so good. But let's get into some examples. The characters in the cutscenes often look a little ridiculous, with terrible lip syncing and some bizarre movements. Rescuing this lady has her... I don't know, but it can't be good. This girl's pigtails generally make me uncomfortable. Weird breast physics. This guy pulling back an invisible curtain, although that's probably just a bug. Textures are often very bland. Many animations are obviously repeated. And there are effects that seem lazily added or inconsistent. Like, look at this rain effect on the water over there. No, not at the blob man. The rain effect. If you see the area from another angle, it looks as if the effect was copied and pasted kinda randomly. There are a few things like that, but I picked this example as it perfectly segues into my point about the graphics. You aren't meant or usually given an opportunity to pay close attention to the textures or specific effects. Most things are so fast-paced that if you're paying close attention, you're likely getting actively killed or in one of those weird pauses that takes place before transitioning to the next segment. Yeah, those are weird. Also, if you're not the best typist like me, you're likely going to be peeking down at your keyboard in high-stress situations, so even less time staring at the screen. On top of this, there's a heavy vintage film grain effect, something I usually don't like or turn off immediately if I can. However, here, since I'm not really missing out on anything graphically and the whole game has this pulpy B-horror movie inspiration, I actually liked it. Overall, the graphics not being all that great is passable, but it does hurt the cutscenes the most. The design, on the other hand, is solidly above average. We have the bosses, characters, and many of the environments being pretty good. Good design can make up for a lot of graphical shortcomings. It doesn't make this game timeless or anything like that, but it certainly makes looking at this game more engaging. Okay, sound. Another mixed bag. The general zombie noises and environmental sounds definitely add some immersion. The weapon sounds are so constant that it's a real praise that they never got grating. Other combat sounds are relatively stock, but I ended up finding them funny more often than not. There are audio bugs, and it's hard to tell where these went wrong over the several iterations and adaptations that this game has gone through. But anyway, basic sounds, good. Voice acting, great.
No motherfucking way, man. I manicured only yesterday.
You manicure.
Isaac, baby, my lips are sealed.
Think of your sister before threatening Papa Caesar.
For the guns, a voluptuous vixen vowing violent vengeance.
Look, I can't wait to discuss the writing and the dialogue later in the story section, but stick with me in the meantime, we're just talking about the acting. Basically, everyone hits the over-the-top campy tone, with memorable and distinct voices and fantastically ludicrous deliveries.
That psychotic son of a bitch. What the fuck is he doing here?
Maybe he's having a barbecue.
I know you got my back. That's enough. You dig me?
I love you too, man.
Right, that's fucking it.
There's only one performance that I would describe as bad, although it's likely so bad that it's good.
Where's my fucking medicine, you feckless peasant?
The voice acting ended up being one of my favorite things about this game, although the subtitles were not always good at aligning with what was being said. Music is also well done, with a lot of 70s or B-horror movie inspired tracks, certainly dialing up the cutscenes and the transitions. Now, I was just going to leave it that this original soundtrack is pretty darn good, but apparently fans have been requesting an official release since House of the Dead Overkill was released in 2009. It is available unofficially from Rips, but come on, give the people what they ask for. Overall, I'd basically say that the presentation is okay, and it's time for gameplay. Quick disclaimer, I'll only be covering the main game, not multiplayer, minigames, or hardcore mode. I'll briefly do a compare-contrast to the rail shooter version, but I'm trying to stay on track here, okay? Okay. If you've been watching so far, you probably have a pretty good understanding of gameplay, so I'll breeze through the obvious stuff. Each level has the same format. Narration, cutscene, start level. Enemies pop up with words to type on them, you type them as fast as possible with no need to worry about ammo, then a sometimes awkward transition to the next segment of the preset path to kill more enemies. Rinse and repeat until you get the boss battle. Defeat the boss, cutscene, voiceover, and lastly a screen showing your final score and a letter grade for the level. Beat all levels, and you win the game. Of course, take too long to type words on enemies, they'll damage you, taking 1 or 2 blocks of health. If you reach 0,
You're dead.
Costing 50% of your current points to continue. Those points are earned by increasing combos, which are reset by errors, from saving civilians, and you can pick up items in the form of power-ups, medkits, collectibles, and a few other things. Like classic arcades, there is a leaderboard, so if you want to dedicate your time to being the best zombie mutant typist there is, all the power to you. Alright, those are the gameplay basics, but there are a few other things to mention, like the attempt at enemy types. There are bloated mutants that require you to quickly type their word or they explode. There are fast-moving mutant babies, yes, babies, that require you to quickly type their word or they attack. There are normal enemies that throw projectiles, requiring you to quickly type the letter on the projectile or it damages you. There are these big guys who grapple with you, requiring you to quickly type the words to prevent their attacks, eventually having you awkwardly finish them off. And of course, the bosses. If this summary sounded repetitive, it's because the enemy varieties don't bring much variation to the gameplay. I don't want to sound reductive though, as the gameplay is really fun. I mentioned earlier that typing effectively emulates the high-stress chaos of a light gun game, and I stand by it. If you're typing really quickly and miss a key, your stress level will shoot through the roof, just like if you had run out of bullets and forgot to reload in the standard version. Having 3 mutants in your face may cause you to temporarily forget where certain letters are on the keyboard. 2 quick notes on how the words appear though, real quick. They may contain capitalization, spaces, or punctuation, but you can completely ignore those everywhere except the final boss, just focusing on the letters themselves. It may also benefit you to check the version of English in use prior to starting the game. Mine was defaulted to British English, which included U's in words that, as an American, hadn't had U's since we threw them into the Boston Harbor in 1773. If you're Australian, I don't know what to tell you. Melbourne.
Melbourne.
What? Anyway, it's high-intensity stuff and I generally found it really engaging, although best played in 1 or 2 level bursts. My main gameplay critique is that it's obvious that this game is a simple adaptation of its light gun rail shooter counterpart. A lot of the game is built around aiming. The enemy types I mentioned earlier offer more challenge in the original version, forcing players to aim for specific locations rather than the one-typing kills-all method of this version. This can create issues with which enemy you want to target as well. If you start typing a word, like holy shit. Anyway, if you start typing one enemy's word, you can't switch to another without backspacing, canceling that previous attack altogether and beginning anew with the other enemy. I pretty much never did this, but it really hurt for ranged attacks. It's usually just one key to stop most projectiles, and if you try to quickly bang out the words on an enemy to kill them, then shoot the projectile, you're often too late to avoid the damage. The weirdness around the absence of aiming presented itself most in the boss battles though. Several of those in the original game required targeting specific locations, even with audio callouts to reinforce that direction.
Shoot its eyes out!
The audio callouts are still in this version, but you're just typing. There are a few that handled the gameplay switch from aiming to typing really well, none more than the final boss, which I think is the best in the game, but many of the others felt samey. Overall, if this were more of a remaster rather than almost like a port, then I think Typing of the Dead Overkill could be even more fun. They came by that shortcoming honestly, as this was a simple adaptation, so I really don't find this goofiness very frustrating, generally more surprised that the gameplay adapted so well in the first place. I'm saying it's a damn fun game. It's time for the story, and don't worry, I'll warn you when I'll be discussing spoilers, but I first need to spend some time on the writing. Stories in games like this are almost entirely fluff. Any plot is just set dressing for the carnage, and the genre is incredibly forgiving for poorly written games. That being said, I can confidently say the writing is my favorite thing about Typing of the Dead Overkill. Yes, there are some funny word prompts you have to type to kill mutants, and some fun pop culture references. But the dialogue is fantastic. Alright, so there's basically 8 characters in this game excluding the narrator, the 2 main ones being the pencil neck Agent G.
You ever gonna tell anyone what that fucking G stands for?
No.
And Detective Isaac Washington.
Isaac Washington. Make him mad, and he'll rip your balls off.
I'm gonna rip your motherfucking balls off!
Others include Papa Caesar.
We shall celebrate this tonight with takeout Chinese.
Varla Guns.
Papa Caesar, you better pray those fucking pigs catch up with you before I do.
Jasper Guns.
You've gone too far, Papa Caesar.
Candy Striper.
Well, Jasper had this thing he'd like me to do where I'd,
Fuck, I don't need to hear that.
Warden Clement Darling.
Do excuse me.
And his mother, Mrs. Darling.
Clement, don't ignore me.
They are each over-the-top, distinct, campy cliches, but done in such an intentional way. Like, there are 2 dialogue exchanges that I can only talk about in the spoiler section that shocked me by how clever they were. I genuinely laughed out loud almost every cutscene because it goes beyond being good at not taking itself seriously to a hilarious satire of grindhouse B-horror movie and rail shooter tropes. I mean, it's not War and Peace or whatever, but the writers knew what you would expect in a game like this, then plays on those expectations.
Varla, can I ask you something?
What now?
Don't you think it's odd how these doors seem to open and close automatically?
Shut up.
Shit! This is like that film with all them birds.
Which film with all the birds?
You know, the bird film. Fuck!
This is just good comedic writing. I can only think of one cutscene I didn't think was funny, and even that had some decent satire, just a little too on the nose for my taste. There are even some solid plot reveals and notable characterization. This is what you can expect with the House of the Dead series, but the writing deserves accolades. So, we are now at the moment where I need to warn you about the upcoming spoilers. I know I've built up the story, but I assure you that there are many funny moments I need to leave out, so if you were to skip past the spoilers, play the game and come back, you'd be able to experience all the goofy greatness firsthand. Anyway, skip to the time on screen to avoid the spoilers. Alright, let's get into it. So our main plot follows Agent G, a main character in the House of the Dead series who works for the AMS, a government agency meant to stop zombie or mutant outbreaks. He teams up with Detective Isaac Washington to stop Papa Caesar, a deranged individual with access to a Cold War-era formula that turns people into mutants, which are basically zombies. He's also apparently responsible for killing Detective Washington's father. I hope I haven't lost you yet. Upon the detectives reaching Papa Caesar, he is with the genius scientist, Jasper Guns, clearly modeled after Stephen Hawking. Papa Caesar says something weird about Chinese food and threatens Jasper's sister, Varla Guns, a dancer at the local strip club. This does not sit well with Jasper, who shoots up a lot of the formula, accidentally allowing Papa Caesar to escape and becoming the first boss battle. Upon defeating Jasper, the detective's vehicle is blown up and Varla Guns shows up, vowing revenge against Papa Caesar for her brother's death. We follow her in the next level, where she heads back to the club, which apparently has a stockpile of weapons, and picks up Candy Striper. Candy is a fellow stripper and was the girlfriend of her brother before his unfortunate death. She has to break the news to poor Candy.
He's gone, Sugar.
He's left me? How could he?
He didn't have much choice in the matter.
Oh no! My baby's been wheeled away by another woman?
No, girl. Jasper's taken that great stair lift in the sky.
That can't be. His only went up one floor.
His batteries are flat.
Oh, that silly Billy. I always told him to carry a spare.
He's fucking dead!
No!
The outbreak reaches the club though, and the two women have to fight their way out of the strip club, get Varla's motorcycle keys from the second boss, two gross mutant strippers, and chase down Papa Caesar. Meanwhile, our two detectives track Caesar to the county hospital, in which he's doing more experiments with Formula X. They kill a whole bunch of mutants, including the next boss, which offers some solid gameplay variety, but miss out on Papa Caesar again. He leaves a phone in the boss though, which, after some discussion, is given to Detective Washington. On the other side of the phone, of course, is Papa Caesar, who says something else about Chinese food, says a bunch of taunts, and blows up their other ride. Varla arrives just in time, this time without Candy Striper, to pick them up and have some incredibly hostile dialogue.
Guns? Varla fucking Guns? What kind of name is that?
The name I was born with, dipshit! Is that a thanks for saving my worthless pig hide I just heard, Lieutenant Limp Dick?
Vi's showing a little bit more motherfucking respect!
Eventually, after they temporarily step off her motorcycle to investigate some mutants, Varla leaves them behind. Detective Washington takes this poorly, as he goes on about how he was trying to be reasonable when he actually just said derivations of motherfucker a lot. Anyway, they're next to a mutant-infested carnival, and they fight their way through, killing a pretty easy boss. Agent G finds a vehicle near the carnival, an ice cream truck, and the two almost share a good moment.
A brother cannot be asked to relay his personal affiliation to his music before knowing he can trust that motherfucker.
Ever thought of therapy?
What the fuck for?
All you do is get pissed off at and with just about anything and anyone.
Can I drive?
No.
Can I have a lollipop?
Yes.
Meanwhile, Varla sees Candy on the side of the road, which makes a little sense, but she's back on the team. The pair of women see Papa Caesar go into a nearby slaughterhouse, and they follow with a reveal that he apparently force-fed Jasper Chinese food. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on with that. After killing a shit ton of mutants with some fantastic dialogue from Candy, they miss Caesar again, and have to kill some sort of Minotaur lady boss, clearly designed to be killed by targeting her udder, but in this version is pretty underwhelming.
What is it?
No idea, but it looks like it's going to charge.
But Varla, I don't have any money on me.
Anyway, after defeating this boss, her cleaver is thrown up on some rafters, and she's ground up by a giant meat grinder. Apparently, the reverberations from that or some shit causes the giant cleaver to fall, slicing off one of Candy's arms. The pair of women frantically talk, with Varla grabbing Candy's severed arm instead of doing anything to really help prevent her from bleeding out, and we experience the funniest death scene ever.
Be strong for Jasper.
I can see him, Varla. I can see him on his stair lift, coming down for me. It's quite slow, but they have to be. Something about health and safety.
I was bummed though. Besides her bizarre hair and ridiculous overall design, every line of Candy dialogue is fantastic. Anyway, Varla takes Candy's arm with her and leaves, vowing, I guess, double revenge against Papa Caesar. In the next scene, the two detectives drive up to see Varla holding a gun to Papa Caesar's head in front of a big train. There's that moment where everyone starts arguing and the villain can just do whatever he wants for a little while and no one does anything about it. Well, I guess Detective Washington shoots him, but that doesn't even leave a bloodstain. Apparently the train is his evil contraption or something and he begins escaping on it, but not before the two detectives jump aboard and leave Varla behind. Agent G and Detective Washington fight their way through the train, occasionally being harassed by some sort of praying mantis creature that appeared super randomly in the slaughterhouse, until they eventually get to the roof of the train and fight him properly. It's another boss where you're supposed to aim for his eyes in the original version, but just more standard typing for us. The bug gets slain, the train crashes, and our two cops are thrown aside. Varla pulls up on her motorbike, has more hostile dialogue with Detective Washington, but is suddenly held up by Papa Caesar. Detective Washington calls him a motherfucker, but he forces Varla to drive the two of them away to the county prison, but not before taunting and leaving a tape behind for Detective Washington. He ignores it, Agent G pockets it, and the two detectives decide to take a shortcut to the prison through the nearby swamp, hoping to arrive in time to save Varla and stop Caesar. They fight their way through the swamp, almost making it all the way through, before they are rudely interrupted by the blob man I mentioned earlier. It's alright, not great, not bad. Anyway, they make it through the swamp, and Agent G tries to extend an olive branch of support to Detective Washington. In his own way, he accepts it, but the pair sees Varla and Caesar drive by and head on to the prison. Upon making it there, they meet a fucking loon outside, who turns out to be the warden of the prison, Clement Darling. The detectives and him have a strange exchange, confirm Papa Caesar and Varla are there, and head in to save the day. Well, after killing another army of mutants, the detectives come upon the warden on a stage behind glass that I didn't notice at first, with Varla and Papa Caesar tied to electric chairs. Warden Clement Darling reveals he's been behind the whole thing, and Papa Caesar had just made a deal with him. He wasn't the mastermind. Well, Warden Darling kills him, then has his mother brought in a chair. Basically, he admits to adapting Formula X, which he found in a Cold War-era bunker underneath the prison, to extending the life of his mother, who he clearly has some sort of physical relationship with. It's gross, weird, and his mother says this.
She's got small tits. Don't use the one with small tits, Clement. I forbid it.
But the boss is brought out to kill the detectives, and Varla, Warden Darling, and his mother all take the stage elevator down to the secret bunker below. The boss battle is higher stress and more difficult with a lot of slang and acronyms, but after defeating him, the pair take the lift down, hearing Warden Darling doing something bad to Varla. Well, they eventually catch up, and it turns out Warden Darling had placed Varla's brain in a jar and put his mother's brain in Varla's body. Well, she uses some sort of psychic force push on the detectives that then respond by shooting her off a ledge into a vat of Formula X. This turns her into a horrible hell pit abomination, and you're gearing up for this to be the final boss.
It's certainly been an adventure.
You want to do the honors?
Varla, this is for you. How we survived that, I don't know.
Hey, if we hadn't found these miniguns just lying around, we'd be fucking dead for sure.
I'm just glad Varla got the justice she deserved. So, what do you plan to do with your life now, Isaac?
Well, I figured as soon as I got home, I'd go pay my respects to my old man.
And then?
And then Washington's going to fucking Vegas, baby!
Come on, you can't tell me that this isn't clever or at least hilarious. Now it's the real boss battle against Warden Darling's monstrous mother and Varla's mutated body. The gameplay takes a turn for the fantastic, as it now becomes typing words as fast as you can, with words associated to a current topic dealing more damage, and really feels like an epic gameplay finale as much as it is for the story as well. After this huge battle, Mrs. Darling is defeated, but Warden Darling sprints up with a bomb trigger in hand, threatening to blow them all up. In exchange for not doing so, he simply asks the detectives, everyone, get ready for this because it's fucking gross. He asks the detectives to let him go back into his mother's womb.
You fucking handle this freak show. I need to sit down.
Right. So they decide to let him do so in exchange for the bomb trigger. As they wait for a helicopter to fly them out of there, Agent G and Detective Washington are sort of reflecting on what they've been through with some funny dialogue. Here is where one of the two fantastic reveals I mentioned earlier crops up. Agent G sort of chastises Detective Washington for always saying,
"Motherfucking everything,"
but calls him out for never calling Warden Darling a motherfucker.
Yeah, but there we were, face to face with the real motherfucker.
Huh?
Clement more than likely fucked his mother, and not once did you call him motherfucker.
I was so surprised by this. I expected Detective Washington to be one of those Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction dirty mouth cliches, but they played on that expectation and tied it into the plot. Fucking great. It gets better though. The two cops grab Varla's brain and get on the helicopter, eventually throwing the bomb trigger out the window to destroy the secret bunker, the corpse of Mrs. Darling, and the warden himself. They have a conversation in the helicopter, and it just blew my mind again.
I'd be more worried about reading the past 12 hours as a damning fucking indictment of contemporary feminism.
Beg pardon?
I just think two dick-wielding cop cliches taking down a 100-foot birthing mother is a statement fairly limited in its interpretation.
I'm not sure you can read too much into that.
Not to mention, the strongest female role model in this whole affair ain't much more than a gherkin in a pickle jar.
Come on, this is brilliant. Here I was planning on throwing a little blurb into this script about the depiction of women and sex work, but then to have the least articulate character in the story blatantly address the potential interpretations of that exact idea is just great form. I never would have expected that, and it's clear how intentional all of this is. Anyway, Isaac tells the helicopter pilot to take them to Vegas, who turns around revealing he's a mutant, and the two detectives nonchalantly draw their pistols as the closing freeze frame. Credits roll, but there's a little Easter egg at the end of this story. Remember that tape Papa Caesar threw at Washington but Agent G picked up? Well, it now plays after the credits. There's some fluff, but there is a reveal that Warden Darling had several friends also with access to Formula X, apparently not afraid to use it, and that Detective Washington's father is still alive. It seems like a sequel tease to me, and if in the next few years a House of the Dead Overkill 2 was announced, you'd better believe I'd be keeping a close eye on it, especially if it has a typing adaptation. I think the story is a lighthearted, self-aware, campy romp through tropes and clever writing to subvert expectations. Again, it isn't the Phantom Tollbooth or anything, that book is fucking awesome, but I found it hilarious and well done. Okay, we're welcoming back our spoiler avoiders. I hope the journey sliding the video timer was a good one. Overall, I can confidently say that The Typing of the Dead Overkill is a fun game, an effective gameplay adaptation of a console and arcade-flavored genre to PC with good writing, fun characters, and a goofy comedic story. I have to remind you that as much as this game is fun, it's also meant to help people with their typing speed and accuracy. Does it succeed, you may or may not have asked? Spectacular question, so I decided to find out for you. Before playing this game, after not caring much about my typing speed for years, I did a quick assessment, learning that I type about 54 words a minute. After beating the game, for which I played 5 straight levels back to back, I retested and got 69 words per minute. I present this as irrefutable evidence that The Typing of the Dead Overkill will increase your typing speed by about 27%. No follow-up questions. I had a blast, but we have to get into the part of this video where I can or cannot recommend this game, and I find myself conflicted. Absolutely play this game if what I showed you looked like something you'd enjoy. If you grew up playing light gun games but haven't really played many in a while. Or if you like campy B-horror movie tropes and cleverly whimsical writing. Frankly, this game is an easy recommend on sale. The Steam version, which includes the rail shooter and typing versions, is $20 with 5 DLCs at $3 each. Now, I bought all of this in a set for $26, but this is a value conversation. After beating the game all the way through once, without trying the hardcore mode, minigames, or the rail shooter version, I beat the game in under 5 hours. Personally, I can't recommend any of the DLC, as they are all just additional words to type on mutants attacking you, and $20, at least to me, seems a bit steep for a 5-hour game that's this old. I would recommend this game as a wishlist wanderer. Put this sucker on your wishlist until you get that little notification that it's on sale, then take a crack at it. The game itself is super fun. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name is Harvey Bodega, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot.
Caesar's heading to the hospital. We gotta stop that asshole before he gets there.
Tasteful ride.
Don't disrespect my wheels. She's my pride and joy.
We'll take my car.